Welcome back everyone to another Mythfall devlog. If you're new to the channel, I'm building a browser-based bullet hell MMO from scratch in Golang and documenting the process along the way. This week I wanted to work on adding player housing. I decided that I wanted to move away from the old town progression system where you purchase shop upgrades and get new items, and after a few too many hours playing Core Keeper, I decided to build a player housing system. I really wanted to add a major progression anchor to Mythfall, and I felt like player housing gave me a lot of opportunities to do that. I can add gameplay mechanics like crafting and upgrades, I can add player expression mechanics like decorations. I feel like there's so many different expansion possibilities, so I'm excited to see where it goes. But enough talk, let's jump into how it works and some of the issues that I ran into. The first thing that I did was a quick mock-up of how it would feel to run around and like just place objects like these little rocks here. And there's a few issues, like if you place on top of yourself, you get stuck because the collider overlaps with your collider. So I kind of had to work on a few of those little bugs. Another decision that I had to make was deciding how the interface would feel. I did a little mock-up of this little like left-hand side interface where you select different things and place them down. And it's kind of like a side inventory that only is active when you're in the player housing area. And this worked okay, but it was a little bit weird because then there was housing items which were separate from like regular items, which was a little bit confusing, and it wasn't super clear when you craft something if it would go into your housing inventory or if it would go into your player's inventory. So I decided to scrap this and just make the housing blocks full-fledged items that the player can equip, and when the player has them equipped, they're able to place them onto the ground. So it kind of works like this, where you can just run around and like place different blocks on the ground like this. So you basically equip it and it becomes in your inventory. And if you switch to like a stone wall, for example, you get a little like nice ghost image, and you can run around just like placing your wall. But yeah, this was kind of what I ended up landing on, and I think it works pretty well. Also, I decided to make housing blocks soulbound. So if you drop them, I'll drop one over here. If you drop them, it opens this little mini chest thing here, which only you can see, but it's technically data stored on the server, so you can pick this up whenever you want. I didn't want people to trade housing blocks because some of them are very progression related, and I felt that it was like worth it to lock the progression behind the player actually doing it rather than just purchasing it from someone else. So most of the housing blocks, if not all of them, are all soulbound, so you can't trade them. But as you can see, there's already quite a few different blocks, and there's different types of blocks as well. One thing I want to show you guys is how to purchase new land. So there's different, right now there's only 4 squares you can purchase for different housing chunks, I call them. And you basically just purchase them by running over here and spending honor and gold to purchase a new chunk. Then it appears and you can start placing stuff down on it and decorating it however you want. So that's kind of how it works. I will probably expand this in the future, but I wanted to start small and expand later rather than having it all available right at the start. So yeah, but anyways, let's go through the different types of housing blocks. So there's largely 4 different types of housing blocks. There's ones that don't do anything, like for example the walls just kind of sit there and block you from moving. Then there's ones you can interact with. There's ones that let you craft things, so they have a lot of different recipes, and you can basically go through, and if you have the required ingredients, you can like craft the crystal press, for example. And then there's types of items that do processing, and they do it over time. So for example, the iron forge processes ores into bars. So for example, I can just drop iron ore in here and it'll slowly craft over time into bars. And I'll explain how this all works behind the scenes. But you can leave this going and it'll just craft bars for you, which is pretty standard. There's a lot of different types of crafting tables, and these all craft different like types of things. So for example, there's a jewelry desk that crafts rings and jewelry. There's a scriptorium which crafts different books from pages. There's an alchemy table for crafting potions. There's the artificer's workbench for crafting like magical items basically. And there's the anvil which crafts like metal items and a few other random things as well. So for example, once you place the anvil down, you only start with a few items. Like for example, you can only craft iron items. And then you place these other blocks which are called upgrade blocks. And these ones unlock recipes on a crafting block. So for example, these are called, this is the chlorolite tools, this is the gold tools, this is the obsidian tools, the mithril tools, the cobalt tools. And each of these upgrades the anvil another level so that I can craft different gear. So you need all of the like prerequisite ones. So for example, to craft mithril things, you need to have all of the tools up to mithril. But basically you'll craft these upgrade blocks at the workbench, which you can't see them because I've already placed them in the house. But once you have these placed in your house, you'll be able to craft new gear in your anvil. I wanted to do it that way rather than having a bunch of different anvils, just because then it's like you have more stuff in your house that does more things rather than like you craft craft a mithril anvil, then all of the other anvils are just like waste item you just throw out. So yeah, those are the 4 different types of housing blocks. Obviously there's floors too, which are kind of just, they don't do anything. They're just more like decoration. But there's a lot of different types of these crafting blocks. There's a lot of types of processing blocks, which can let you craft different levels of bars. There's a crystal press, which can be used to craft full crystals from crystal shards, and also it crafts these new like upgraded compressed crystals from a collection of regular crystals. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of expansion opportunities here as well, which is pretty cool. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Another decision that I was a little bit torn on was whether or not to make the housing area in the like the town, or if I was going to make it a like special instance where you'd enter a portal that goes to your like house, or enter like a doorway or something like that. And I might do that in the future, but for now I kind of just wanted it to be more like communal, like a communal area where you'd see other people going to their house. So what I do instead is basically when you're inside of your house, you can't see players who are inside of their house as well. So like there's like a little like invisible threshold here where once you cross over it, you basically turn invisible to other people, and then they turn invisible to you, which works pretty well, I think. Though I'd love for people to see each other more rather than being like in their own little area. So I think it can be improved a little bit. I might do like some sort of opacity slider or something like that, but this is at least where it is right now. And yeah. Implementation detail wise, I basically just have like a big list of different recipes, and then they have a upgrade requirement. So placing the tools gives you like the required upgrade level that lets you craft the different item that you wanted to craft. And those just get automatically filtered from being displayed in your like anvil crafting interface, depending on what you have placed in your house. Then for the processing one, this one's actually a lot more complicated because the normal crafting blocks don't have to store anything. But the iron forge, for example, like when I place iron ore in here, this needs to be stored somewhere. Like the player can now leave and like go to different worlds and like log out and all of that stuff. And that iron needs to remain there. So it's got to be stored somewhere on the server. So I have this special like housing storage component that gets placed onto my player's housing object. And that basically manages all of the storages for all of the different blocks based off of where they're placed. So for example, this one's placed at a specific position, and then that has its own little storage data set that gets stored on the server. And then for the processing timer, I wanted to make it so that people could log out and have the crafting still work. So you can log out basically, and it'll be crafting in the background. And then when they log back in, they can run back over there. And more things will have been crafted at, I think I did the rate at like a 50% rate. And so how I accomplish that is I basically determine the amount of time that needs to be passed before it crafts. And I basically track a global timer on the server. Like this is a server authoritative time, and the server just keeps track of this time constantly and checks to see like how far past the next crafting time you are. And it basically just calculates how many things need to be crafted and based off of how long you were away. So then I basically go through and process all of the things that should be processed based off of the new time. And when the player returns, they can like get all of their new items, and they'll just immediately be crafted all at once. And then just as like a little backend note, I spent a lot of time rewriting all of the storage interfaces so they could all work together, because I had a lot of different implementations of storages. So I'd have like a bank storage, I'd have an inventory storage, I'd equipment storage, I'd your backpack storage, and then like housing storage, you just added another thing. And it was kind of getting to be a lot to track. So I ended up making a single storage object and implementing all of the storages on top of that one object. So I have like a slot object now, which lets you stack items. Oh yeah, I guess that's another thing I added here, was because now that I'm adding this crafting stuff, I needed to add stackable items, because it would be just way too much work to have like 8 iron ores and like go through and manually place them all into your iron forge. So I wanted to make some items stackable. This also helps a lot with players like getting resources in the sphere. So they go in the sphere, they get a bunch of resources, but their backpack fills up too fast. So now they can at least play a little bit longer before they have to recall to go back to bank their items. But yeah, so I rewrote all of how all the slots work now. So they all use just one single interface. And I do all of the swaps now transactionally, which helps a lot with preventing like item duplication glitches. Because if there's ever any error in like dropping an item or something like that, if there's ever an error that happens there, I just revert back to the original state. Like I'll make a copy of everything, go do as much as I can. And once I hit the first error, I just like revert back to the initial starting point of that transaction. So like the transaction here is like, I want to pick up 127 iron ore. And if anything goes wrong there, then it just reverts back and puts it back into the bag and reverts this back to its original state, because I have that like original clone of of the old inventory states. That helped a lot with writing the code. It makes it so much more simpler to write because there's no like weird like error handling logic. It's just like, oh, there was an error. Okay, like let's just stop this and the player like try again or something. Something went wrong. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this all turned out. I think this is a nice little expansion, and there's a lot of like little ideas I have of what I want to put in people's houses, like what sort of decorations I think I could put and all of that. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But yeah. But anyways, that's all I have for this week. As always, an absolutely massive thank you to all the supporters on YouTube, Twitch, GitHub, and Patreon. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.